Welcome back to our channel. We have a really quick video to play, but before I roll that clip, the International Criminal Court Prosecutor Karim Khan got frustrated. The man was really frustrated most recently. He went ahead to lash out to global powers, talk about the impact that children are facing in war zones around the world and what's happening in Gaza and in Israel, in Lebanon, in South Sudan, and also including Russia, Ukraine. He kind of spit it out. This guy is frustrated from what he said. If you watch the video, you're going to see it. He feels like nobody's listening. He's trying to figure out what's going on in the world. He used words like hell on earth, that this is really nonsense. There is just nobody listening. So he got frustrated. This is my first time to see him got to this stage where he's so frustrated with the international system and with the rule of law that I begin to imagine, like, what's really going on? If a top lawmaker or law enforcer can get so frustrated, it means everything is out of control. If you watch this clip, the prosecutor went ahead and named the impact that children around the world are facing, especially in Gaza. He spoke about how children are being blown up and the limbs, head, and a whole lot of other tragic things. I never heard a speech like this. So let's roll the clip and we will join you on the other side.
It is about including children in more effective ways. And as we look around the world, whether it's children in Ukraine or Afghanistan, the hell on earth that is Darfur. People are being hunted because of the color of their skin and the failure to grasp the nettle of accountability. Whether it's the hell on earth of people that are wondering, children wondering what's happened to their families that are hostages, or the hell on earth that it is to be in Gaza now if you're a child. We need to do better. And this comes really to the final points, something that President Nave Pillay mentioned. The definition of the contours of the law is interesting to lawyers. But what drives the law? It is our empathy and our sense of humanity. I've been honored to meet Jewish families after the 7th of October. Most recently on the 7th of October and just yesterday, but also in Kibbutzim. And there was one child, Kifi Bibas. He was 10 months old with shocking red hair, taken from his home, a place of safety. And how many pictures have we all seen of babies in Gaza with faces blown off and limbs blown off, parents holding them or them crying, where are their parents? And a realization that children young, do they know? We have children, we have nieces or nephews, we have family. Do children know what is a passport? Do children and babies know what is nationality? Do they know even religion? Unless we can see past these accoutrements that are part of a world that we wish was civilized and proclaim sometimes it is becoming ever more civilized, and see the humanity that should drive the law, we were going to be condemned. So ultimately it comes back to this: we can do better to investigate, to plot, to present. Who will enforce? This is for states. Is law for power or is law for people? Is it children or is it interests? Is it for right or is it for wrong? Now this will be condemned, of course, as being overly simplistic, but is it? Is it simplistic? Why is it simplistic? Do we choose light or do we choose darkness? Is it going to be never again? Is it going to be time and time again? Is this place going to be honored? The victims, the pictures, the testimonies that are represented by the Nuremberg Tribunal and the Yugoslav Tribunal and Rwanda and Sierra Leone and the ICC, are these to honor the victims the promise that they give us their accounts not out of some voyeurism, giving jobs to lawyers for doctoral theses to be written, but in a quest to ensure never again becomes a reality, because it is a reality. And it comes down to this as well, I think. When we weep, when we see pictures and stories, do we accept, do states accept this must be the price of doing business for economic advancement and for strategic interest? Is all of this suffering of children the price of doing business? And if not, it could stop today if we viewed those children of different hues and colors and creeds and languages with different hopes and dreams as our children. So much of this would stop far more quickly. So the legal aspect is clear. It requires a will, a determination, an insistence, a groundswell of opinion, not from lawyers and judges, but from all people around the world, to demand in the name of God, in the name of humanity, in the name of the continuation of the species, stand up for children. Because if we together feel stronger, together we can make sure children are seen, we can make sure children are heard, and in the name of our future, we can try to stop the hell on earth that is their experience as we speak right now. Well, firstly, what a difficult act to follow. I think just having the opportunity to hear such collective wisdom and experiences conjures up in the mind 1,000 questions to which one struggles to grasp and articulate the answers. But Professor Dr. Christoph Saffeling, firstly, thank you so much to you and to the Academy for the humbling and very real honor to be able to address such a distinguished group of experts. I think by any metric, this is the most important conference there could be. We all go to different conferences and every part of the law is important, but this is as basic as it gets in terms of the relevance of the law, the potential of the law, the imperative of the law to protect the most vulnerable. And the most vulnerable are our children. And the moment, as Shakespeare would say, is out of joint. The world is in agony in so many locations, for so many people. And as we see politically lurchers to the right, we remember the importance of the Nuremberg trial and this Academy. And I think you have so many fans in this room, you and the board of the Academy, that it won't add anything, but I want to say it, that the Mayor's address, we have the federal government representatives of the state, that this is an Academy that deserves massive recognition and support, and perhaps now as much as ever. Because the lurch to the right that we see globally, unfortunately, leads to baser instincts that we've seen before. Anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, othering, people who look different, who sound different, who worship differently, are scapegoats. They are the lightning rod for the blame that people who are struggling to deal with a very fast-changing planet, you blame somebody, and that is causing not just tremors, it's causing such difficulties internationally. And it's in that sphere, in that lived experience, that the law has to operate. And so everybody knows the importance of Nuremberg, the importance of the tribunal, the importance of the Nuremberg principles, the essential nature of focusing on what individuals do. This essential moment when there was a realization that by focusing not on a people, a nationality, but on criminal conduct, there was a very real way of drawing the poison, addressing it, putting it up literally in the courtroom, in the crucible of a courtroom, to ensure victims that were unseen, that were viewed as not visible, that were made to feel worthless, marginalized even before the crimes, could be seen by the law. And in that process also ensure the antidote to collective guilt. And that's a big issue, because unless we look at individual conduct, these cycles of violence, these generational traumas that individual victims and communities feel, continue, and then there's no hope of peace and justice at all. And looking out around the room, President Pillay, President-elect Javier de Gemende, the Nuremberg Academy members, Veronique Aubert, Chief Prosecutor Serge Brammertz, Brenda J. Hollis, Kim Sillinger, former Special Advisor. So many of you are people, Judge Song, so many people that I look up to, people that have made a difference and are making a difference, and together, none of us will feel alone. I think that's a first important thing to recognize. But for all the importance of Nuremberg, there's a realization. It wasn't perfect. No court is perfect. No proceedings are perfect. But dealing with children, the Nuremberg proceedings, the proceedings of major war criminals and the subsequent proceedings also under Control Council 10, displayed a failure to specifically look at children. As we have seen in many tribunals since, they have been very often conflated with the general civilian population, not really brought out as much as it should have been, with the hopefully struggled little bits of wisdom humanity is gleaning over the passing decades. We see so many that were exterminated because of their age and their youth. So many Jewish children were not viewed as valuable. In fact, they were viewed, quote unquote, as worthless. And the bright hopes of their future, the wonderful opportunities for them to take part in the march of civilization against darkness, was extinguished by hate. So many Jewish girls subjected to crimes of sexual violence, never mind servitude or what we'd call slavery today. Forced labor. You all know, you don't need to repeat it, Joseph Mengele, the experimentation on children, the racism underpinning it all. And even before I became prosecutor of the ICC, I had had the privilege of dealing with so many children, victims, representing children that had been tortured, representing children who had seen their family members tortured, dealing with children that had been raped, dealing with children born of rape. And one thing became absolutely apparent to me, and I think in this we must be humble. Internationally, we are behind the curve compared to national systems. We have not fully understood the power of children to be very credible witnesses, to be compelling and competent witnesses. A paternalistic approach has been evidenced, I think, in all of the different courts and tribunals to different extents, in which we know better because we're older. Maybe we know a little bit of the law. And this principle, this mantra, this value of doing no harm has been interpreted as simply don't talk to children at all. And that's wrong. That's inappropriate, it's short-sighted. And as Mr. Halilovic Yankogo said earlier, it's not what children want at all. And what we see, and I'll come to it a little bit later perhaps, and I'm trying to make sure I don't speak too long because it's one of my many faults, is that if one does not have a child lens on investigations, leaving aside everything else, normative values, one is failing as a prosecutor to put forward the most compelling, very often, information to the tribunal of fact and law. You're failing to see how conduct directly targets children or affects them in ways that judges can then assess and determine about how the law has been applied in practice by individuals that are charged before it. And the ICC, as we say repeatedly, it's the child of Nuremberg. As the Yugoslav Tribunal and Rwandan Tribunal and the Special Court for Sierra Leone, all, they take something from the Nuremberg principles. But how do we do better? Well, we have a framework. The Rome Statute is replete with examples where children are specifically mentioned. It's such a well-drafted document in this regard. Article 6, children are specifically mentioned regarding forcible transfer. Also regarding measures taken to prevent their births. We have Article 7, which is the realization that trafficking of children may be one of the indicia that will demonstrate rights of ownership, leading to also slavery crimes. Article 8, of course, crimes of conscription. And one can go on in terms of special advisors, like the wonderful Veronique Aubert, the work she's done, in terms of crimes against and affecting children. It can be manifest in terms of the special responsibilities, also in Article 54 and 60, to give special consideration in terms of our priorities and what we focus on in relation to violence against children. But these are steps. I recognize them. They are to be applauded. In fact, the halting steps may have even become strides. But I think let's not beat about the bush. What we need is a paradigm shift. What we need is a fundamentally different approach in which we put children at the center and ensure that they are seen by us, they are heard by us, and no more the Victorian mantra that children should be seen and not heard. If we fail in this, we're going to be, unfortunately, condemned in all likelihood to keep dishonoring this place, to risk dishonoring the legacy of Nuremberg in this hall, whose walls are redolent with history, that stands for so much. I think we should also feel both a sense of regret or shame and urgency and hope to galvanize ourselves to make sure that the promise that echoed from capitals around the world, seeing the awful pictures of gas chambers and racism and crimes against vulnerable communities, the Jewish people in Europe and crimes elsewhere, that gave right to this wonderful cry of never again. We will not, how can we as humans, how can we as a species allow these crimes to take place? And it's in that context we have the UN Charter. It's in that context that we gave promise to see and ensure that power would not allow the kinds of crimes from being committed. And we need to do an awful lot better. And yes, in the ICC, important steps. Lubanga, it's been mentioned already, the first trial dealt with recruitment and conscriptions of children under the age of 15 and convictions and very important jurisprudence by the judges of the ICC. We have really the historic, very important decision of Ntaganda, also in the Democratic Republic of Congo, with the finding also that an armed group can be responsible for committing crimes against their own soldiers. Again, another important issue of Ongwen, another decision of the judges, including forced pregnancy and forced marriages as an inhuman act. But how do we move forward to this paradigm? I think humility and a conviction that it's not an option, it's an imperative. There'd been a lot of work done on children, but when I came in and one of the strategic priorities I set was to do better and really not just to speak and have a soundbite and have a policy, but to ensure the policies are implemented in practice. And under the guidance of Special Advisor Veronique Colbert, we consulted and we put forward a completely new policy, a complete redraft. And this redraft is also important because science is not static. The landscape that was painted by Yale, if I may, has been evolving all the time, like all sciences. Now the understanding of damage to the brain, to memory, to experiences, is so much more involved than it was even 10 years ago or 15 years ago. So this policy is seeking to apply and implement best practice from that. We're trying to, and we have looked at national systems who routinely are interviewing children in Germany, in France, in the United Kingdom, in Kenya, in so many parts of the world, in South Africa, and using those approaches and those policies, not reinventing the wheel, achieving best evidence. How do you put questions simply? What kind of room? How are you engaging with children? How are you building those relationships that our sister Yale spoke about? How do we hear them, not just speak at them? And then also this understanding that was touched upon in the previous segment, that there's a complete difference between a child, a baby that's 10 months old, or a 4-year-old, and a 10-year-old, and a 16-year-old. So the importance of having a disaggregated approach in terms of how we deal with those individuals, and there's a spectrum. And yeah, you're an inspiring figure, and a little bit scary, but if I can say so, that the next point is, I heard what you said about a trauma-informed approach. And next year, God willing, we will bring out a new guide on a trauma-informed approach. Now, I know you're concerned about it, but I don't think there's a difference. What we've seen in terms of whether it's, well, all crimes, all policies, gender crimes, gender persecution, crimes against and affecting children, slavery crimes, is we need not to be siloed. We need to see things, the intersecting characteristics of a witness are not just something to include on a tip box. They are absolutely essential to understand how reality, how life and criminality affects them. And in my reading, the trauma-informed approach is simply a manifestation of that. There's no one-size-fits-all formula. Every child, every individual reacts different to different stimuli. And once you are aware that there's a spectrum of responses, different triggers, you are likely to be better in building the relationships that are absolutely essential to hear what children want to hear and build their account into the evidence that you are presenting. And one thing I also said, Veronique, when I was in Geneva at one of the roundtables, is that in the cases that we are building under my term as prosecutor, I've said I do not want a trial to take place in which we haven't found a way of ensuring the voices of children are heard. Not adults speaking about experiences when they're children, and whether that's using Article 56 of the Rome Statute, which is a unique investigative opportunity, or whether it's by the video, taking video evidence in a way that is appropriate for the child. Sometimes the simplicity of speech, unadorned by education, or unadorned by sophistication of life, is much more impactful, much more compelling for a judge to consider about how crimes have taken place. And then moving very quickly, this difference between crimes against children and crimes affecting children. We see crimes against children in so many ways. Girls that are simply denied going to school. We see education facilities that are bombed. We see children forced as child soldiers. But we also see how in every way children are affected by conflict, by hearing bombs, by wondering where daddy or mummy is, by being forced to be refugees or being internally displaced. All of these factors are essential for us to map if we are to understand and analyze alleged criminality in the situations before the ICC. I will say, if I can very quickly, to Mr. Halilovic, that when we launched, Veronica, you'll recall, in New York, the policy on crimes against and affecting children, we were lucky enough, I can't confess it was such a brilliant idea of me, it was actually my wife, but we were very lucky that we had a child in the audience, and with the permission, speaking to the parent, that child sat on the stage, and that child presented the policy, made some opening remarks, and shamed all of us in terms of how eloquent and clear and captivating they are. So I think this is also very important. Thank you so much.